The Indianapolis Colts need to get on track back at home against a Las Vegas Raiders team that is spiraling right now. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you all for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is a crossover of your daily podcast covering the Indianapolis Colts and the Las Vegas Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. And Crossover Thursday is presented by PrizePicks. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts, and I'm joined by the one and only Q of Locked On Raiders as well. Q, we've done a couple of these crossovers here. It feels like our teams play every single year. But guys, we're going to be diving into the normal rhythm of these crossover shows. We're going to talk biggest storylines between these two teams, biggest matchups, and what the keys to victory are for both of our respective teams. So Q, you guys are the road team coming in here to Indy, trying to get your season back on track. So I'll let you start off. What's the biggest storyline for the Raiders in this one?
You know, I think you said it right there, trying to get the season back on track. They won the first game of the season against the Patriots, and then they dropped 3 in a row, right? And they should have won that game against the Bears on Sunday. They lose 25-24 at the house. And, you know, that's something that they're looking up like, okay, hold on. We had that success in week 1. How do we get back to winning ways? And now Indianapolis, a team that, and I'm sure you probably understand where I'm coming from, I don't think a lot of people had high expectations thinking they were going to be a really good team in 2025. They're showing everyone, including the Rams, who they probably should have beat last week and been 4-0. So now what looked like it might have been an easier stretch on their schedule, there's no easy games, but an easier stretch on their schedule, now it looks like a bear going into Indianapolis trying to stop the bleeding of a 3-game losing streak. So, yeah, that's the biggest storyline, is how to find a way to get back into the win column. And, oh, by the way, Zach, you're doing it without your left tackle, Colton Miller, who's now on IR, right after the first game that you had a lot of success running the ball. So I think those two go hand in hand. How do you make up for Colton Miller being out, and how do you get back in the win column?
Yeah, and we're certainly going to talk more about that matchup with Colton Miller versus this Colts pass rush on the rest of this crossover here. But Q, I really wanted to pick your brain here that, you know, I think this Raiders team was a team that a lot of people had surprising this year, maybe being a playoff team. Geno Smith coming in, Pete Carroll, a very different style of coach. What's kind of gone wrong for this Raiders team these last couple of weeks?
They just are so inconsistent with what they've been able to do. And Geno's been turning the ball over at a rapid pace, right? I mean, you turn the ball over, you're going to lose a lot of games. Against the Bears, they turned the ball over 4 times, and they only lost by 1, which kind of tells you more about the Bears than the Raiders, right? But, I mean, he's leading the league in interceptions right now with 7, and that can't happen. And 6 of them happen at Allegiant Stadium. So he's been turning the ball over. The running game wasn't really cooking the way that they wanted it to go to start the season. Last week, it was actually really good. Ashton Jeanty did a fantastic job, including housing one, taking it 64 yards to the house. So he's showing why the Raiders drafted him at number 6, but they just haven't been able to put it all together, right? The offense, defense, and special teams all playing at a high level. Defense was great last week against the Bears. I mean, 4 turnovers, and they limited them to 13 points off those turnovers. So that's a really good job done by them. But can they do that consistently? Can they be that team? So I think it's just consistency, trying to figure out exactly what they're doing moving forward. Learning how this offense led by Chip Kelly is supposed to go and continue to evolve this defense. So it's still a work in progress, man. I mean, I estimated this team to be an 8-win team this year, 8 or 9, because they won 4 last year. But as they sit at 1-3, man, that's going to be tough sledding unless they start getting back to winning ways.
Yeah, it does seem typically when you have a lot of moving parts early in a season, that is when these type of teams do tend to struggle, and then they pick it up as the season goes on. And like you said, before the year, this felt like an easier stretch where they could really find their groove. But now they're coming to Indy against a Colts team that's 2-0 at home this year, including a walk-off victory over the Denver Broncos. And I think the biggest storyline for the Colts is just showing that those first 3 games, or heck, you could even include the 4th game in here, despite it being a loss, because they did go toe-to-toe with the Rams, just continue showing that those are not flukes. You know, that this is a new Indianapolis Colts team. They're not the same old 8 to 9 win team. They are a team to watch in the AFC picture that can potentially get into the playoffs this year. So big key for it this year will be converting their opportunities on offense, unlike last week where they had the dropped ball at the 1-yard line going into the end zone, which everyone saw. They had the holding penalty that wiped out a Jonathan Taylor long touchdown run. So they could have easily put up 34 points on the Rams, but that crazy hostile environment, the ebbs and flows of that game just did not go their way. Now they're coming back home against a Raiders team that's had a couple of rough moments these last few weeks. It's time for the Colts to show that they are legit. They still are that team from the first 3 weeks that was averaging 34 points a game and really putting teams in the blender. So I think that's the biggest storyline for the Colts, is just showing it's not a fluke, that they actually are for real this year.
What's been the key, though, to the success? Because, again, like I said, I looked at the Raiders' schedule. They had the Bears, the Colts, and the Titans. And I said, you know what? There's a chance that they can go on a 3-game winning streak right here. And, again, that's not disrespecting any of the teams. It's just looking at it like, okay, I don't know what to expect, especially since, Anthony Richardson, Daniel Jones, who's going to be the starting quarterback, right? And there just wasn't a lot of high expectations from my point of view. But, again, they're off to a 3-1 start, playing some really good ball. But what has been the biggest key to their success so far?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has just been Daniel Jones surpassing those expectations that not only you and other people in the media, but even us locally really had in him. I think even the biggest Daniel Jones fans would have said, like, okay, he's still going to have some issues with turning the ball over, still going to have issues under pressure like he did with the Giants. But I think the best thing that happened for him was the first 2 weeks of the year, they went against the two most blitz-heavy defenses in football, the Denver Broncos and Miami Dolphins. Those teams come after you. And they were anticipating New York Giants Daniel Jones to corrode under pressure, not really know what he's doing back there, and turn the ball over a lot. And what we saw, especially in those first 3 weeks, but even a little bit this last week as well, is this has been a different Daniel Jones. He still has his limitations. He's not the Josh Allens or the Pat Mahomes or these top-tier quarterbacks. But he's played well under pressure. He's moved this offense well. And when you have an offense that has so many weapons, Michael Pittman Jr., Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, who should be back this week, Tyler Warren at tight end, Quentin Nelson, and a couple good players on the offensive line. Oh, and Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. Yeah. You just have to be a distributor back there. And if he can just make those couple plays a game that makes him like a little bit above average, that's the key between like 30-something points and 20 points in this offense. So he's been making those big-time plays. He's been bailing them out at times, and he hasn't corroded under pressure. So really the biggest key for this Colts team is what we've said the last couple of years with the Colts is they've been an 8-win team with really bad quarterback play since basically 2020, when Phillip Rivers retired from the team. So if they could ever just get above average quarterback play, this could be a playoff caliber roster. And they're finally getting it this year. And it's coming from a very unlikely person in Daniel Jones, who was cut midseason last year, only had 2 suitors on the open market, one with the Vikings to potentially be a backup quarterback, the other to come and compete with the Colts. And he's looking like the comeback player of the year right now. And a lot of it is due to his level of play.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt, man. I got to give him a lot of credit. I got to give the Colts a lot of credit. And I guess it doesn't hurt when Jonathan Taylor's leading the league in rushing either, right? He's healthy. He's that guy. Obviously, the Colts offensive line is doing a hell of a job as well. But yeah, again, I was surprised. I have no problem admitting that. And they've done a really good job. And shout out to Shane Steichen as well for making the right decision and right call when he went with Daniel Jones as opposed to Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, no, it was a decision that was lambasted a little bit in the media and also even locally here, because it felt like settling for the safe option, but the safe option has turned into the winning option in Indianapolis this year. And I think, again, the key when it comes to the storyline here is like, you made that all-in move to start Daniel Jones, and it's worked so far. Let's get back on track this week against the Las Vegas Raiders, back at home to a controlled environment. We can do a lot of our pre-snap stuff because we're not hearing that Los Angeles crowd, and you're not coming off a road trip to get out there. So I think this is a good moment for the Colts to just get back to what they want to do. But coming up, guys, we're going to talk about those crucial matchups. And Q already alluded to one of them. There's a backup offensive lineman out there for the Raiders against the Colts defensive line that finally had a good week of pressure. So we're going to talk about that and a couple other matchups here in just a moment. But first, the NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. It makes watching football just much more exciting when you got a little something riding in on that action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you guys waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. And also, guys, Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, and with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From the footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how they craft every single model, and you guys can just feel that Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Nappa leather upholstery. Like our players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. All right, Locked On Everydayers, we are back talking all about this Colts and Raiders matchup here in Week 5. The Colts sitting at 3-1 atop the AFC South. The Las Vegas Raiders sitting at 1-3 on a 3-game losing streak, trying to go into Indy and turn their season around. So, Q, I'm going to just throw it back out to you here. What is the most crucial matchup for you for the Raiders to get back on track this week?
Well, I'm really interested to see what the Raiders' offensive line is going to look like against the Colts' defensive line. Obviously, the Colts have some studs along that defensive line that can get to the quarterback and also stop the run. And the Raiders have been struggling with their offensive line. They have had no consistency so far this season. Week 1, they had their starting 5 out there. Week 2 and Week 3, they had a backup there in the right guard spot at Alex Kappa in for Jackson Powers-Johnson. Week 4, they get their starting offensive line back. They did really well against the Bears, right? We're able to run the ball. They protected Geno really well. Great. They lose Colton Miller at the end of the game, left tackle. So now going into Week 5 against the Colts, they're going to have their third version of the offensive line in 5 weeks. Like, there's no consistency, and that's the one position, as you know, Zach, that's most important in football to have consistency, is that offensive line. It's not just a individual thing. You've got to be able to work together. You know, I always say one band, one sound. That's what the offensive line has to be. Now you got Stone Forsythe that's coming in, and the Raiders, Pete Carroll had familiarity with them. They was in Seattle together with each other, but he wasn't very good. Let's just call a spade a spade. He wasn't very good. So he's going to have to try to step up and really hold that spot down for Colton Miller, who's been their best offensive lineman so far this year. And that's not going to be easy. So now Geno's going to have to try to learn to trust him. And he's already been having trouble, keeping the ball, in the Raiders' possession and not turning it over. So that's going to be an issue. Ashton Jeanty now is going to have to try to run behind another version of the offensive line. Like, it really comes down to the trenches. Like, I know every game does, but to me, this one's really going to come down to the trenches. How quickly can Stone Forsythe get on the same page with the rest of the offensive linemen? Will that affect Geno? How much will it affect him? And obviously, how much will it affect Ashton Jeanty as well?
Yeah, and it also feels like a big time too, because Geno likes to push the ball vertically. That's where he's been at his best, going back to his West Virginia days back in college. Is he likes to throw the ball vertical. He has a great vertical pass, and that's when they won their one game this year against the Patriots. What was Geno Smith doing? Hitting that long ball, having big shots over the top. So when you have a backup left tackle in there, it makes it tougher to trust your pocket, to trust where you're going to be. And it seems like bad timing for the Raiders too, because Laiatu Latu, the Colts' first-round pick from last season, is coming off a game where he had 9 pressures, a sack, a couple quarterback hits, and a 35% pass rush win rate against the Los Angeles Rams. Wow. I think the Colts are going to put him over top of a backup offensive tackle as much as possible in this one. So I think that is going to be one of the biggest individual matchups in this game, is how Forsythe, or is it going to be Forsythe? Do we know that for sure right now? Or is it okay? Because I know they talked about Charles Grant a little bit as well.
Yeah, Charles Grant's not ready yet. I mean, he's the third round pick out of William & Mary. He's just not ready. But Pete Carroll told us on Monday that if Colton couldn't go, it'd be Stone. And then we talked to him on Wednesday as well. And so Stone's ready. Talked to Stone in the locker room. He said he's been in the system for 3 years, so he knows what it's like. And I understand that, and I respect that. And I want the young man to have confidence, because, well, if you don't, then you're already in trouble. But it's not, again, like I said, it's not an individual thing. It's not like he's a cornerback and he's just trying to learn how to play the position. It's a left tackle, and he's got to know what the left guard's doing. The left guard's got to know what the center's doing. The center's got to know what the right guard's doing. And the right guard's got to know what the right tackle's doing. It's not just an individual thing. So that's why it's the bigger issue for me, is how quickly can they get on the same page, get reps so they know what each other is doing without really saying a word, right? Having that kind of silent communication. It's not going to happen right away. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I want to keep it in the trenches here, because I think, like you said, man, like, most games come down to how the trenches are won. That's how the Eagles won a Super Bowl last year. They had the best trenches on both sides of the football that led to that victory in the Super Bowl. But going to the other side of the ball, the Colts offensive line is coming off a game where they were just killed by the Rams defensive line. Jared Verse, Byron Young got after them all game long. And the Colts silent count was pretty much figured out by that defensive line by the second and third quarter. And it led to just a massacre up front. The Colts were able to put points on the board still, but it was not the prettiest game from just an operational standpoint on the Colts offensive line. And it doesn't get much easier this week because now you get Max Crosby, a 1A pass rusher on the outside who moves around. He got did he get the interception last week? I know he knocked the ball up in the air. Yeah,
knocked the ball in the air, got the interception, had multiple pass defense. I mean, the dude was all over the field. He was an absolute madman on Sunday.
Yeah, no, Max Crosby's always a madman. He's one of the best players in football. And then an emerging young player that you guys stole from us last year, Jonah Luwalu, as well. I've seen him having some good moments this year. So they have a good defensive line there with Vegas. And the Colts, luckily, are getting healthier on the offensive line. It looks like right guard Matt Gonsalves should be back this week, so their starting five should be back. But they need a rebound game against, again, Max Crosby, Jonah Luwalu, for some reason that we couldn't keep him last year. It's very sad still to this day. And other players on that D-line. The Colts offensive line really needs to bounce back.
Well, I'll tell you, man, that's one of the strengths of this Raiders team is their defensive line, being able to get to the quarterback, and then also being able to stop the run. And that's why I think that's going to be such a huge challenge as well, is what is that offensive line going to do against that defensive line to help free up Jonathan Taylor? This Raiders defense, if you look at it, the way that they're built, they're literally built to stop the run. And if they do stop the run, they try to make a team one-dimensional, pin their ears back so a guy like Max Crosby, Malcolm Koonce, Tyree Wilson, and others could get to the quarterback. But you look at their linebackers, Jermaine Pratt, right? You got Landon Roberts, right? You got Jamal Adams. Like these guys, Devin White. These guys are all guys that are sure tacklers, veterans that know how to tackle. And they did a good job, except for week 3 against the Commanders, where I don't know what that game was. And they don't either. They just kind of chalked that up to a terrible game in D.C. But for the most part, they've been doing really good limiting teams when it comes to rushing. Matter of fact, the Bears only had 2 yards rushing in the first half of the game on Sunday at Allegiant Stadium, which is incredible because that's just not heard of. So that's where their butter is. That's how they butter their bread, is by stopping the run and having a very strong defensive line. So we'll see if they can get back to that. I know, again, like I said, the Colts are going to want to run the ball, and Jonathan Taylor leading the league in rushing right now is not going to be an easy out at all.
Yeah, no, for sure. And one thing I really want to throw your way too is what the Colts do to set up their run game is they pass to set up the run, right? So they'll come out in 12 personnel, some heavier 11 personnel sets with receivers motioning into the backfield, and they will throw the ball at a 70, 75, 80% rate out of play action all first half long. Taylor will get like 6, 7, 8 touches in a first half, but that where he does his damage is in that second half. So I would say one of the biggest matchups for not only the Raiders this week, but for any team that plays the Colts is you got to limit the passing in the first half and make sure you go into halftime either tied or with a lead. Because if the Colts have a lead coming out of halftime where they just threw for 200 yards on you, it's all Jonathan Taylor in the second half. All Jonathan Taylor, and it makes you go back into nickel. It makes you go back into dime because you're worried about the pass, and then Taylor gets the rock. So I think looking at it from the Raiders' perspective and also from the Colts' perspective is how do they match up early against the Colts' passing attack? Because, again, the Colts are going to come out, a lot of play action, dumping it off to Tyler Warren, getting it out to isolation shots to Pierce and Downs and Michael Pittman Jr. over the middle. So how well can those linebackers react to the play action and get back into their zones and take away those middle of the field shots that the Colts want to take early?
Yeah, and that's going to be a question because the linebackers that I mentioned, they're really run stuffers. They're not really necessarily the ones that are household names when it comes to coverage, right? So that's going to be a hell of a chess match right there for Patrick Graham and company to see how they match up against the Colts. And I'm sure that they've seen what you're talking about on film and realize that they're going to have to adjust a little bit. And, the Raiders secondary is a little questionable as well. Eric Stokes has been their best corner so far. He's a little bit banged up. I think that he's going to try to go, but he left the game on Sunday against the Bears with a knee issue, like a sprain, and he says he's good to go, but he's been limited in practice so far this week. And, Caillou Blue Kelly has been struggling a little bit as of late. He's the first-time starter for the Raiders, first-time starter in his career, period. And then they got a rookie in Darian Porter who came in and got a little bit of relief for Eric Stokes when he went out last week. So he's a guy that many anticipate getting a lot of burn, but he's a rookie. So, how are they going to be able to match that up and try to slow down the passing attack with those guys unless they're all on point? So I think, like I said, it's going to be a chess match between the Colts and the Raiders, obviously.
Yeah, and one more match I want to throw out before we segue to our final segment is the Colts, as of this recording, like just earlier today, had a player retire, a starting player retire on their team. So now that outside corner spot with Xavier Howard stepping away from football is coming down to Mekhi Blackmon, who allowed over 100 yards in coverage last week, notably the game-winning touchdown where he fell down on that play. That's where most of his yards allowed came on that one play. Or undrafted rookie Jonathan Edwards out of Tulane, who was a guy that wasn't really on many people's radar whatsoever in this past draft process, surprisingly made the Colts roster. So those could be two guys fighting for a starting role for the Colts this week, which I think a big matchup will be Trey Tucker on the outside versus one of those guys, or Geno Smith, again, a willingness to go down the field against some backup corners with Howard retiring. So that'll be a big matchup to watch. But don't worry, guys, we have even more coverage coming your way. We're going to talk about the keys to victory for both the Raiders and the Colts coming up here in our final segment on today's show. But first, the NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans cheering on your team. But let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle. Between queues, login screens, and prices jumping at the checkout, it's just frustrating. But that's why I love Gametime. The app gives the advantage back to fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price that you pay. Gametime is one of my favorite apps out there. It is so helpful when it comes to not only going to football games, but other sporting events, concerts, comedy, anything near you guys. I've used this dozens of times to go to my concerts, and it's been such a benefit to me personally. So I highly recommend Gametime. Download the Gametime app, though, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go download Gametime today. Already Locked On Everydayers, we are back wrapping up this crossover Thursday episode. I'm Zach Hicks of Locked On Colts. That's Q of Locked On Raiders. We're talking about the keys to victory for both of these teams. Q, what do you got for the Raiders this week?
Well, I think they have to try to have as much as a balance of attack as possible, right? They have to be able to throw the ball and then run the rock. And again, I go back to the trenches. It's going to be challenging without their starting left tackle out there who's on IR right now. So they have to try to do that. Week 1, Geno was able to throw the ball around the yard, did a really good job, and they won the game. But they know that that's not going to be sustainable. So they've got to be able to be balanced. Ashton Jeanty really came around last week against the Bears. Would like to see him continue to get lathered up and run like that he wants to, and that Pete Carroll wants him to. And Chip Kelly's offense works better when he has a really good run game. So they've got to try to establish that. But like I said, it's going to be really difficult not having that key cog on that offensive line. So how do they adjust to that is going to be something to pay attention to, especially early on in the game. And it's funny you mentioned Jonathan Taylor getting a lot of his carries in the second half. That's what the Raiders really want to do, is have Ashton Jeanty get a lot of runs in the second half. That means that they're either winning the game or they're really close and they can stick to their game plan, right? If they have to air it out, that means they're coming back from behind. So I think they have to be balanced as possible on the offensive side of things and get the ball out of hands of Geno Smith. When they are throwing the ball, get it out of his hands as quickly as possible. Just because, again, the offensive line, I think, is going to be a little bit leaky. So offensively, that's what it's going to be, balanced and quick hitters. I don't think there's going to be too many deep shots just because I don't think he's going to have the time to stand back there in the pocket. And then, when it comes to the defense, they've got to have to stop the run, whenever the Colts hit them with the run. If it's early, if it's late, whenever, they're going to have to do that. They have to stop the run. And I think they're going to have to create a couple turnovers. I think if Daniel Jones puts the ball in harm's way, they have to go get it. Right? The Raiders have never been a team in the last 4 or 5 years that have been just dominant when it comes to creating turnovers, but they need to find a way to get the ball. Go see ball, get ball. They need to do it a couple times. Give that offense maybe a couple short fields and take advantage of it. So it's really not a hard recipe, but it's not the easiest recipe when you're going on the road to face a team that's actually playing really good ball this year.
Yeah, no, you said it best there. On the road, going to a dome team that has been very comfortable at home this year. I think in the Colts, 2 home games this year? They've had 32 points scored, I think, in the 2 games this year combined, or 32 points per game scored in the 2 games combined. So yeah, this Colts team is scoring really well at home. And I think that's gonna be my biggest key right here. My number 1 key is the Colts offense just getting back on track, getting the process rolling again, getting those penalties out of your system, the pre-snap calls out of your system, getting everybody healthy, get back to what was working in those first 3 games and just shake that Rams game out completely. When it comes to the defense, I think the biggest key is just making Geno Smith hold that ball just a tick longer than what this Raiders offensive staff wants him to. They know as well as we know that left tackle is going to be exploitable, so they're going to want quick hitters, they're going to want screens, they're going to want to get that ball out of his hand. So as much as Lou Anarumo can disguise blitzes, show 5, bring 4, show 5, bring 6, show 4, bring 6, change as much of the picture as possible, drop guys into coverage late. So Geno Smith has to go from 1 read to 2 read, make him hold it 0.1, 0.2, 0.3 seconds longer. And that could be the difference between getting 5 sacks or 1 sack in this weekend. So I think that's going to be a huge one. And then I think the biggest one, another big one for the Colts here is just get points on the board early. We talked about how the Colts plan of attack is Shane Steichen says that he wants to throw to score, run to win. Essentially what that means, though, is it's throw to set up the run, throw to soften the defense and set up that run in the second half. You can only really do that if you are leading or you're in a pretty close game there going into the second half. Last week, they felt like they were trailing, but they were really like kind of suffocated a lot on offense all game long, and they got away from the run. Get that lead early, go out there, score on your first drive, score on your second drive, and put this Raiders team distance from you. Show them that they're the 1-3 team and you're the 3-1 team early when you're the home team, and you can really demoralize your opponent. But I think this Colts team, it's really just about getting back on track, getting to where they were in those first 3 games, and washing out all the lady unluck in week 4 that they just had. Everything going against you, the bad bounces, the weird drops at the goal line, the holding penalties. Get all that back at home in week 5.
Yeah, and one more thing for the Raiders, they just can't beat themselves. Right. That's one of the things. And you talking about the mistakes that the Colts made, that makes me go back to Geno Smith turning the ball over, the Raiders getting dumb penalties at the worst times. They're not a good enough team to overcome that. They're just not, right? And some teams, they find ways to overcome it. If they have 10 penalties and go for 100 yards and a couple turnovers, sometimes they're able to still win that game. The Raiders aren't in that category. So they have to make sure that they play a clean game. They can't turn the ball over at a rapid pace like Geno's been doing, and they definitely can't have dumb penalties that put them behind the sticks or give their opponents, first downs when they don't need to have first downs. So got to play a clean game as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Both these teams kind of don't have that margin for error where they can lose the turnover battle and still win games. Last week was the first time all year the Colts lost the turnover battle, and it resulted in their first loss of the season. The Raiders all season have struggled with that turnover battle with Geno Smith leading the NFL in interceptions. So that's going to be a big key for this game just for both teams. But that is all we have for today, guys. I will say, though, for anyone thinking that this could be a one-sided affair with a 3-1 team and 1-3 team, never count out a team with Max Crosby and Ashton Jeanty and Brock Bowers, even if he is a little banged up to start the year. Never count out the team that has the superstars on their team. So I think this is going to be a good showing here for both these squads. It's a must-win game like every game is for both teams, but for completely different reasons. The Colts want to get back on track. The Raiders want to salvage the season and roll into the Titans with a chance to go 500 to start the first 6 games. So I think we're going to get a good one here on Sunday, guys. We appreciate you all tuning in to this crossover, though. Thank you for making Locked On Colts and Locked On Raiders your first listen today and every single day. The NFL season is finally here, so if you're your next listen, get a double dose of the Locked On NFL podcast. Tyler, the Madman Rowland, gives you a shot of espresso to start your football day, while Tony Wiggins takes you into the barbershop for the smoothest breakdowns to end the day. Find Locked On NFL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. If you guys don't already, make sure you're following us on social media as well, at Zach Hicks2. And Q, are you on Twitter or anything like that?
Yeah, at your boy Q254.
There we go.
Yep.
At your boy Q. You guys can check more of that Raiders content. For Colts fans too, go over there and check out Q's content. Does some great work over there. And subscribe to our shows on YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great day, guys. We'll be back with you on Friday for our final recaps before the big day.